me complains about not reading much for the first half of the year and then reads like 13 or 14 books in a month and then dreads having to film a wrap-up. Hey guys, my name is Haley and today I'm going to be filming my June wrap-up. It's going to be a long one. I read so many things, probably because I just went for it with the Pride Month TBR that I did not post a video about but had always planned on doing. And I read so many books because I haven't read contemporary in several years. And now all of a sudden I'm in a contemporary mood. And that was all I wanted to read the entire month. And there were so many options. So we might be here for a while. I cried a lot during several of these books this month. I don't know if I've ever said I am an extreme empath. So considering that a lot of queer books have a lot of bad things happen to people, I was an emotional wreck this entire month. It was a great time. But yeah, we're gonna jump on into it. The first books that I read were the first 2 volumes of Heartstopper, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And these are adorable. I was on it. I should read the rest of Alice Oseman's books because 2 of her books are on my favorite books of the entire year list. So I was like, I guess I'll probably like the rest of her books. And spoiler alert, I did read the rest of her books except for Volumes 3 and 4 of Heartstopper I have not read yet because my library didn't have them. I hear that you can read it online, but where, I don't know. I'm assuming Alice Oseman's website. I haven't figured that out yet. Also, I really want to own these physically. I gave these 4.5 stars. They're so cute. I love Nick and Charlie. Charlie is my small little bean that I want to protect from everything at all costs. So we started off more cute, and then it went downhill from there in the emotional things. And then, logically, I read Nick and Charlie. This was adorable. I gave it 4.5 stars. I want everything in the realm of Nick and Charlie and his sister. All of it. Give me all of it. And then I also read This Winter, which I also gave 4.5 stars. This is more from Charlie's sister's perspective and is considered a solitaire novel, which, spoiler alert, that's coming up later. Actually, never mind. Let's just talk about that now. I also read Solitaire, which was the last of the Alice Oseman books that I have not read, other than the other 2 Heartstopper volumes. And I went into Solitaire knowing that this was Alice Oseman's, everybody's least favorite of her books, because I've literally never heard anyone talk about this one. I hear everybody talk about Heartstopper, I hear everybody talk about Loveless, even Radio Silence. I've never heard anyone talk about Solitaire, but the general consensus seems to be that it's everyone's least favorite. And I thought it was just as good as the rest of her books. I don't know if it's just because of the place that I'm at in my own life, of our main character, Charlie's sister, is very angry and kind of hates the world. And I related to her, and I was like, does this make me a bad person? I related to her on a lot of levels. The only reason this was not a 5 stars because I thought the romance was kind of cheesy, the ending, pretty cheesy, but I also didn't hate it by any means. And I liked the angst and the anger and the frustration that she had as a character. It was relatable to read from, which again, might make me a bad person, who knows? And then from there, I literally had 13 books out from the library at once and was just picking and choosing from my queer book pile. So I first picked up Tell Me Again How a Crush Should Feel. This is a sapphic romance, and it is about a new girl who comes to our main character's school, and you think that it's going to turn into a romance with those 2 people because, ooh, pretty new person. And then it flips it on its head a little bit, which I thought was fun. One of the characters in this was probably an actual psychopath. There were times that she would say something and I was literally like, are you okay? Can you please go to therapy and stop ruining other people's lives? It was kind of terrifying. But I gave this 3.5 stars. It was pretty good. It might be closer to a 3.75. It was not my favorite of the sapphic romances, but I think it is a solid sapphic romance book. And then I read Hold Still. This is the last of the Nina LaCour books that I haven't read yet. Basically, my theme for this month was read all of the last books from authors that you've been reading all of this year, aka Alice Oseman and Nina LaCour. Accidentally, that was not my plan. But they just all happened to actually fit into a Pride TBR as well. And Hold Still is about this girl who has lost her friend. It's very sad, it's very emo, it's very much in the vein of all of other Nina LaCour's books where she writes really well about loneliness. And this one was more about loneliness and grief. I'm not gonna lie, this might be my least favorite of the Nina LaCour books that I've read. I've read all 4 or 5 of them now, and this is probably my least favorite. I gave it 4 stars. again, still a good book, but my least favorite of the 5 books I've read of hers. And then one of my favorites of the month, definitely my favorite of the sapphic romances that I have read so far, is the Falling in Love Montage. This was so cute. The cover is also so cute. I'm so excited to buy it. I'm hoping to find it at one of these bookstores of the million bookstores that me and Kate are going to in the next week or so. And this was adorable. It's basically this girl has a lot of trust issues. She's not into dating. She doesn't want to date people because then they can hurt her. She's also very angsty. I was just really into the angsty characters this month, because of other things that have gone on in my life recently or in the last year or so. It's just very therapeutic to read about other angsty characters. And then our main character and this girl decide to have fun for the summer, and they said that they're going to do everything that happens in classic romance movies. So like, go skinny dipping, go do this thing that's really cute, go ride a Ferris wheel, like really cute date ideas, but not actually date, like not put the label on it. And the whole idea is that you're not supposed to catch feelings, which obviously rarely works. So I honestly love this. I related to our main character. I also have trust issues when it comes to dating, so she was very, very relatable to me, and I really liked the girl that she was pursuing. And I always just loved the, we're not gonna fall in love, and then we actually end up falling in love. Also, this title of this, the Falling in Love Montage, might be one of my favorite, like, contemporary titles I've ever heard in my entire life. Also, the cover is beautiful. And I gave this 4.75 stars. I loved it. Next up is possibly one of the saddest and most emotional books I've read in a very long time. And that is If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo. Everybody and their mother read this book when it came out a couple of years ago on BookTube, and I just didn't, because I haven't read contemporary in so many years, because I was always on a fantasy and then sci-fi and then horror kick. So you'll probably be seeing a lot of contemporaries that I've missed in the last couple of years in the next couple of months as I make my way through them. But this is the story of a trans girl who goes to a new school and nobody knows that she is trans. And then it follows a very, like, stereotypical storyline of, like, a teenage movie with a trans main character, which is very important representation. And I read this in one sitting accidentally. I started reading and I was like, oh, this is really good. This is not a perspective that I hear enough from. And the book, for 1, is short, 2, is very fast-paced, and 3, I accidentally finished it in like 3 hours and sobbed my eyes out. I was so sad. Like, I definitely knew where the ending was going, and I still cried a lot. I can't tell if I'm over-emotional this month or if I was reading so many sad books that my empathetic empath self literally could not handle it, especially with them being back-to-back-to-back. But this is so important. I adored this. I gave it 5 stars. It's going to be on my favorite books of the year. Honestly, I'm just late to the party on this one, but I adore it, and I completely understand all of the hype. I'm very excited for Meredith Russo's other book as well. And then I read a book that I heard one person talk about when I was trying to find more books for my Pride TBR, and that is The Antidote for Everything. I was pitched this as a transphobic hospital, and I was like, that sounds really interesting. I know that is a big issue with trans people, so I wanted to see an interpretation of that. At first, this kind of starts, I will warn you, if you're looking for like a purely LGBT book, this is not it. It definitely has a lot of elements and is very focused on that, but our main character is not LGBT. However, her best friend is a gay man who works at the same hospital as her. She does have a romance, like our main character has a romance in the first half of the book, and then it turns into the way this hospital is treating her best friend. And her best friend is a doctor who treats a lot of trans patients. And someone at the hospital, I believe this takes place in Georgia, someone at the hospital is deliberately trying to get rid of her best friend's patients. And he's furious because a lot of those people have nowhere to go. No other hospitals won't treat trans patients, won't help them with anything, don't assist them with their body dysphoria issues. And it was so infuriating to read. But honestly, I felt like it was probably realistic. I would love to read Own Voices reviews of this to see if this is handled correctly, because I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I thought it was a really solid read, and I really, really, really liked our main character's best friend. He was probably my favorite character in the whole book. Next up, I read another sapphic romance, and that is the Henna Wars. This one I thought I would like more than I did. I thought it was good, but the cultural appropriation kind of bothered me. I don't know if I'm so aware of a lot of cultural appropriation things because of K-pop, because K-pop stands and attack a lot of idols for that so often. When somebody is doing any sort of cultural appropriation, I'm like, well, that's a bad idea. And that's pretty much what the vast majority of this book was about. Our main character was angry that this new girl at school was stealing henna, like the idea of henna, and using it as making her own business and everything. She was like, that's my culture, you can't do that. So I wasn't completely on board with the romance in this one until like 3/4 of the way through the book. I will say she does apologize eventually for being a bad person and not realizing that it was wrong, but it was really frustrating to read, even though it's realistic that high school students especially do that. It was really frustrating to read people who were just like, I don't care, this isn't my culture, it's art, I can do whatever I want. I'm like, no. I did like learning a little bit more about where henna came from and how they use it in their culture, which I didn't know very much about, which is kind of why I really wanted to read this book. So even though the romance wasn't my favorite, the rest of the things discussed in this book were very important. And I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I read my least favorite book of the month. Not for any particular reason, I think it just wasn't in my wheelhouse. And that is My Good Son by Yang Huang. This is a piece of Chinese literature about a man who is a tailor, and he is trying to get his son to go to school. He's trying to get his son to like marry a good person, and like that is a very common thing in Asia for arranged marriages. Not necessarily arranged, but it's very important for your family that you end up in a good family. And one day a boy walks into this man's shop. He isn't aware of this, but I feel like it's obvious to the reader, and it's obvious to this man's son, that he is a very effeminate gay man. And he has moved to China in order to get away from his family, who is from Texas. And he's trying to live his best life in China, and he comes to get like a lot of clothing done at this tailoring place. And this dad tries to basically not hook his son up with this man as in like a dating sense, but to hook him up with this man and to make them be friends so that he can get this man's parents back in America to sponsor his child to go to the States to go to school. That's the main dynamic in this. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite thing. It was a very fast read, I will say that. I read it in one sitting, although I was intentionally trying to read it quickly. It was very interesting seeing the dad exposed to the different cultures between like America and China. Not only that, but like getting over his homophobia was a big deal in this book. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. It's not going to be on my favorites of any kind, but I did read it for Pride because I knew that there was a gay character in it. Next up, I read The Truth Is. This is a book I posted at least one quote. I've taken screenshots of several quotes on my phone, and I posted one on Instagram because this was very quotable. I will say our main character was not my favorite, but the friends that this girl meets, sold the book for me. This is a story about a girl who I will say isn't the best person. I will say our main character is not the best person. Her inner monologue was very frustrating to read at times. And when this trans boy comes to school, she has a lot of internal monologue that is kind of frustrating to read, but you also realize she has never encountered a trans person before, so she's trying to make it make sense in her brain, but was also very frustrating to read from. Her mom is very, very conservative, like very aggressively conservative, thinks all gay people are bad, and like it was a whole big overarching plot, which came out with some great quotes, I will say. Quotes that were very important regarding religion and LGBTQIA community, which I am very passionate about. If you follow me on Instagram, please do. Actually, me and Kate will be posting a lot on there when she comes out in like 3 days. I always forget to shout out my Instagram because I never think to do it on YouTube. I don't know why. But yeah, if you would like to follow me on Instagram, you will see a lot of me and Kate there in the next week and a half. I also sometimes post book content, sometimes post K-pop content, but that's besides the point. Back to the book. There's a lot of important talk about how the Christian, specifically evangelical community treats the LGBT community, and it was so important, and I was hand clapping at all of it. The story was essentially our main character figuring out just how much privilege she has. A lot of her new friends are homeless. There is a non-binary character. There's a trans character, there are lesbians, like there's a lot of representation in this, and it's a big look at what families will do if they do not approve of their child's lifestyle, as they always put it. I kept saying during this one, I was like, if one more person says that it's just a phase to a teenager trying to come out to them, I'm literally gonna scream. I got to a point after reading so many of these books this month that reading that line was triggering. It was so frustrating. Like, I genuinely don't understand why people don't get how that is not helpful in any way, shape, or form, or in any instance. But I digress. In my opinion, the quotes saved this for me. The main character was not my favorite, but the found family aspects and the quotes and the commentary on religion was very important, so I gave it 4.25 stars. And last, another one that made me sob like a baby and will be on my favorite books of the year is Like a Love Story. If anybody followed my Goodreads of reading this, it was an interesting experience. Because I was really enjoying it for the first like 30%, and then two of our characters, let me go back. So this is a story that is following 3 teenagers in New York City during the AIDS crisis. If you know anything about me, Rent is my favorite musical of all time, so I'm very familiar with the AIDS crisis and the AIDS epidemic. I know a lot about HIV and AIDS. I've read many things from back when I got into Rent when I was like 11 years old when the movie came out, and then got into the musical from there. So it's a subject I was really interested in, but I'm so used to reading it from adults' perspective, so like mid-20s adults, which are the characters in Rent, and these were teenagers. One of our teenagers is a straight girl. One of our teenagers, which is another perspective, is a gay male. And then our third perspective is a male who is not come out yet and is starting to realize that he might be gay, which is a very scary thing to do in the middle of an epidemic that is kind of targeting, or rather the government wasn't doing anything about the disproportionate amount of LGBT people who were getting this virus. And there were so many people that within the church that were very angry about this and were saying it was God's wrath, which, don't get me started on that. I will go on a rant. And again, I was really enjoying the first like 40% of this, and then there was a moment in the middle of the book where I was so fed up with these 3 teenagers and their drama that like I almost DNF'd it, but I knew that there was a lot more to this book than just this random little fight that I did not understand why they were having. And then I was like, Haley, listen, you are a 28-year-old woman. You obviously can't relate to 17-year-olds or why they're fighting about things. So I just kind of put it aside because I was very interested in the political aspect of one of our male main characters gets involved in a lot of protests. He's also a photographer, which very much reminded me of Mark from Rent, who is a videographer who just like takes video of everything that happens around him. And our main character, or one of our main characters in this, took pictures of all of the riots and the protests that they did at churches and other places. I think one of them was at Wall Street, and he was trying to show the world what was actually happening in New York City and how bad the crisis was because people couldn't get AZT to treat HIV and AIDS. So there was this big class debate of why rich people could get this medicine and the poor people could not, even though everybody was dying. My favorite character in this story was our female's uncle. Was the purest human being I've ever seen in a story in my life. I loved him so much. He was also a gay man who lost his partner to this disease and was helped running a lot of these protests, and he just hurt my heart so much. And I was literally sobbing by the last like 100 pages of this book after I got over my annoyance with the teenage dispute that I didn't understand in the middle of the book. So if you can get past that, you will be golden for the rest of the story, because I do think the rest of the story is so important. It is a story that needs to be told. It's not told enough times. Obviously it is told in Rent, but I don't see it told in many other stories. And this is just a time period that is very, very close to my heart because, again, Rent has been my favorite musical since I was 11 years old. So that was like a social justice thing I was exposed to very early on, and I've never forgotten it. So reading a story from different perspectives, but during that same time period, was very, very fascinating. I was a sobbing mess, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, even though I had a moment of annoyance. And that was all of the books that I read in June. It was so many. I don't know how much I'm going to read in July because Kate's coming up, so we could either read a ton or we could read not at all. Who knows? We never know. I feel like it's been 50-50 each time that we hang out. We also keep joking about the fact that apparently she just always comes out here in July, right around 4th of July. And we never do that on purpose. But also, I want to talk about one last thing, and that is I watched a TV show, which it's been a hot minute since I watched anything. It's been like 2 months. And that was Sweet Tooth. I either didn't know or completely forgot that they were making a show of Sweet Tooth. This is a graphic novel series that I read so many years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. And the only thing I remembered about it is that there are children who are born hybrids, as a combination of a child and an animal. And there's all different types of these animal children in this world, in this post-apocalyptic world. And when I say I went into this just kind of thinking I could throw it on for fun, the cinematography and the storyline and the pacing of the first episode was fantastic. It starts off with a doctor who is in the city when the world collapses because of this virus. And I was texting Kate during that first episode especially, and just screaming about how much of this show used COVID parallels, which is really ironic because they apparently filmed it during COVID, like last summer in the middle of nowhere, New Zealand. And I was like, that makes so much sense because you would have all of the things set in place. Like they use masks a lot for anything or anyone they come into contact that might have the virus. They have those plexiglass shields in any sort of store. They have signs all over any town that is telling you to stay 6 feet apart from people. Like, the COVID parallels were off the wall. So if you're still paranoid about COVID, please do not watch this. I was watching it and I was like, I have not seen any sort of media represent this well yet. I don't watch a lot of current media, that could be why, but it was a very smart move, I think, for the show to use that to their advantage for an epidemic virus post-apocalyptic story. I also love the kid in this. He's such a good actor. He's also adorable, the guy who plays Gus. And I also really, really like the actor who plays Big Man, who what's his real name? Jeopard. I love him. He has my entire heart. Full disclosure, I have not watched the last episode, but like I think this is going to be a solid like 4-star show if I were to rate it the way that I rate books. I'm really glad that I watched it. It's only 8 episodes, which makes sense because there's only 8 volumes of the graphic novel series. I have looked into some people that were talking about it saying that it's not as dark as the graphic novel series, and I will agree with that. From what I do remember, it was more dark in the graphic novels, and this one has a little bit more of a lighter tone to it. And I honestly think they added a lot of storylines, but I don't remember enough about the graphic novel series to confirm that. But it's a really enjoyable show. It was really well shot. I love the COVID parallels, and I do recommend it if you want a really, really fast Netflix show to just binge in one go. And yes, that is everything that I have read and watched. Again, I will repeat, please go follow me on Instagram if you would like to see any of me and Kate off doing all of our book shopping and picture taking and everything that we have planned in real time, because the vlogs and other videos are probably going to be going up a little bit late. Obviously, I don't post same day ever. Yes, my Instagram is just my name. It's Haley_Hobson. It's always in my bio, but like I guess I'll put it on the screen for you to definitely go search it. But let me know what your favorite thing that you read or watched was in the month of June down below in the comments. Please chat with me down there if you have anything to say about any of these books. Thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.